The Great Hall of Station Prime was built from crystal that sang when light passed through it. Thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds sat in curved rows that rose toward a ceiling so high it disappeared into soft blue mist. This was the heart of the Galactic Council, where species that had traveled between stars for millions of years gathered to decide the fate of younger races. Today, they would judge humanity. Park stood at the center of the hall, feeling very small. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes, but here, surrounded by creatures of light and shadow, of chitin and crystal, he felt like a child called before his elders. Behind him stood Commander, her military uniform crisp and her face carefully blank. She had fought in 3 wars before her 40th birthday. Nothing surprised her anymore, but even she felt the weight of 1,000 alien eyes pressing down upon them. The high speaker floated forward. It had no solid body, only light shaped into something almost human. When it spoke, its voice came from everywhere at once, like wind through empty rooms. Humanity, the high speaker began. You have spread across 3 star systems in 200 years. You have built warships. You have developed weapons that can crack planets. You come before us asking for friendship and trade. But we must ask, what kind of species are you? Bowed his head respectfully. We are explorers, he said. We are builders. We seek only peaceful cooperation with the great civilizations of this galaxy. A sound like grinding stone came from the left. The delegate rose from its seat. It was twice as tall as any human, covered in hard black shell, with eyes like polished obsidian. They were ancient. They had fought a terrible war 300,000 years ago that killed 90% of their people. They had never fully recovered. Pretty words, the delegate said. We have heard pretty words before. Young species always speak of peace while they sharpen their claws. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the hall. Felt sweat form on his back, but he kept his voice steady. I understand your concern, he said. Our history is not without darkness, but we have learned from our mistakes. We have grown. The high speaker raised one hand made of light. The hall fell silent. Then you will not mind proving this, it said. Every species that joins our council must demonstrate that they understand the true cost of violence. You must show us that you have suffered enough to value peace. The delegate clicked its mandibles together. Yes, show us your battle wounds, human. Show us the scars your species carries. Prove that you know the weight of war. His hand tightened into a fist at her side. Felt something cold settle in his stomach. He looked at the alien faces around him, these beings who had known peace for so long they had forgotten what war truly meant. They thought they were asking a simple question. They had no idea what door they were trying to open. Very well, said slowly. We will prepare a presentation for the council, but I must warn you the answer may take some time. Human history is extensive. The high speaker nodded. You have until tomorrow. The council will reconvene at the first light cycle. Do not disappoint us, Ambassador. The session ended. Delegates began to file out, many of them whispering to each other, glancing at the 2 humans with expressions that ranged from curiosity to contempt. Stood still until the hall was nearly empty. Only then did he let out a long breath. They have no idea, said quietly. Her voice was flat but heard the anger beneath it. They think they know what war is because they read about it in old records. Nodded slowly. He began walking toward the exit and fell into step beside him. The crystal walls hummed softly around them, a sound that was supposed to be soothing but now felt like mockery. The lost there said, they fought one war, and it broke them so completely that 300,000 years later they still haven't recovered. And they want to compare that to us, finished. They reached the viewport that looked out over Station Prime's docking bay. Earth's ship, floated among alien vessels of impossible shapes and sizes. Beyond them, stars burned in the endless dark. Stared at those stars for a long time. Somewhere out there was Earth. Somewhere out there was Korea, the land where his grandparents had survived occupation and division and poverty and war. Somewhere out there were the graves of billions of humans who had died fighting each other across 10,000 years of history. "They want to see our scars," he said softly. "They want proof that we understand suffering." Stood beside him, her reflection ghostly in the viewport glass. "What are you going to show them?" Turned away from the stars. His face looked older than it had that morning, carved with shadows that had nothing to do with the light. "Everything," he said. "I'm going to show them everything, and then we'll see if they still think they understand war." He walked toward his footsteps echoing in the empty corridor. Tomorrow, the council would learn what it truly meant to be human. Tomorrow, they would see wounds that had never fully healed. Watched him go for a moment. Then she followed, her hand unconsciously touching the scar on her shoulder where a piece of shrapnel had nearly ended her life 7 years ago. She had been one of the lucky ones. She had survived. So many others had not. And tomorrow, the galaxy would finally understand why humans held onto peace so tightly. It was because they knew, better than anyone, exactly how much it cost to lose it. The council hall was full when walked in the next morning. Every seat was taken. Word had spread through Station Prime that the humans would present their answer today, and curious beings had come from across the station to watch. Some wanted to see humanity humbled. Others simply wanted to understand these strange newcomers who had risen so fast. Carried a small data chip in his hand. It contained more information than any alien in this room could imagine. Behind him walked, and 3 other members of the human delegation. One of them was Sergeant First Class Lee, a quiet man in his 50s with a face like weathered stone and hands that never quite stopped shaking. The high speaker floated to its place at the center of the hall. "Ambassador Park," it announced, "you may begin." Walked to the central platform where a holographic projector waited. This machine was powerful enough to display entire star systems in perfect detail. The council used it to show the movements of fleets and the positions of colonies. Today, it would show something very different. He inserted the data chip. The projector hummed to life. "Honored delegates," began. "Yesterday you asked to see humanity's battle wounds. You asked for proof that we understand the cost of war." He paused, looking around the hall at the alien faces watching him. "Before I begin, I need to ask a question." The delegate leaned forward. "What question?" His voice was calm, but something heavy lived beneath his words. "Which war are you asking about?" Silence fell over the hall. The high speaker's glow flickered with confusion. "Explain yourself, Ambassador." Touched a control on the projector. Numbers began to appear in the air above him, floating in soft blue light. Dates, locations, names. "In the last 500 years alone," said, "humanity has fought over 400 major conflicts. Not small fights, not border arguments, wars. Real wars with armies and weapons and death." The numbers kept climbing. The aliens began to shift in their seats. Some whispered to each other in languages that the translation systems could barely keep up with. "If we go back 1,000 years," continued, "the number rises to over 2,000 conflicts. 2,000 years, 3,000, 5,000 years. We stop being able to count accurately because the records become unclear." He turned to face the delegate directly. "You asked about our battle wounds. I wanted to make sure I understood the question. Do you want to see the scars from the Mars Colony Rebellion 15 years ago? The resource wars of the 21st century? The world wars that killed nearly 100 million people? The ancient wars that burned cities to ash before we even knew how to write?" The delegate said nothing. Its black eyes reflected the glowing numbers like dark mirrors. "Perhaps," said quietly, "you would like to see a wound in person." He turned and nodded too. The sergeant stepped forward. He had been silent since arriving at Station Prime, a shadow that followed the delegation without speaking. Now every eye in the hall turned to him. Slowly removed his uniform jacket. Beneath it, his arms were bare. Even from a distance, the aliens could see the scars. Burn marks covered his skin from wrist to shoulder, twisted and discolored, the kind of damage that modern medicine could heal but never fully erase. "These are from the Mars Rebellion," said. His voice was rough, like stones grinding together. "A bomb hit a civilian shelter. 43 people were trapped inside. The walls were on fire. I went in to pull them out." He held up his arm so the council could see clearly. "I saved 19 people. The other 24 burned to death while I listened to them scream. I was 19 years old." The hall was completely silent. Somewhere in the upper rows, a small alien made a sound like a child crying. Put his jacket back on. His face showed no emotion, but his hands still trembled, just as they had trembled every day for the past 31 years. Turned back to the projector. "That was one wound from one war from one soldier. Would you like to see more?" He touched the controls again. The hologram changed, zooming out from the recent past into the depths of human history. The display now showed Earth itself, a blue and green sphere floating in darkness. But the planet was covered in marks, thousands of them, each one representing a battlefield. "This is our home," said. "Every point of light you see is a place where humans killed other humans, every single point." The marks covered the entire planet. There was no continent without them, no nation, no region. The Earth looked like it was covered in stars, but these stars were made of blood. The delegate made a sound that might have been a word, but no translation came through. The high speaker's light had dimmed until it was barely visible. "You wanted to see our battle wounds," said. "This is just the beginning. This is just the surface. The real wounds go much deeper." He looked around the hall one more time. The aliens stared back at him with expressions he could not read. Fear, perhaps, or horror, or something else entirely. "Shall I continue?" he asked. No one told him to stop. Medical officer stepped forward to take place at the projector. She was a small woman with short gray hair and glasses that she did not really need anymore, a habit from her youth she had never bothered to break. Her voice was soft but clear, the voice of someone who had spent decades delivering difficult news. "I am a doctor," she began. "For 30 years I treated soldiers who came back from war. I fixed their bodies when I could. But the truth is, the worst wounds are not the ones you can see." She touched the projector controls. The hologram shifted, showing a diagram of a human brain. Colors pulsed through it, mapping activity patterns that the alien delegates could not understand. "This is what trauma looks like inside a human mind," explained. "When we experience terrible things, our brains change. The fear stays with us. It hides in our memories and comes out when we do not expect it. We call this condition PTSD. It means the war follows you home, even after the fighting stops." She brought up more data. Numbers appeared alongside the brain diagram. After every major war in human history, between 10 and 30% of surviving soldiers develop this condition. They cannot sleep. They cannot feel safe. Some of them hurt themselves. Some of them die by their own hands because the pain becomes too much. A delegate from a species did not recognize raised one of its 4 arms. "This is a weakness in your species, a flaw that war exposes." Shook her head slowly. "No, it is proof that we are not built for war. Our minds know that killing is wrong. Our bodies know it. Every time we fight, we damage ourselves. But we fight anyway, again and again, because we believe some things are worth that damage." She changed the hologram again. Now it showed a strand of human DNA, the twisted ladder shape that contained the blueprint for every human being. "The wounds go even deeper than the mind," said. "We have discovered that trauma can change our very genes. Children born to parents who survived great suffering carry marks of that suffering in their blood. The pain passes down through generations. We carry our ancestors' wars inside us, written into our bodies." The hall had grown very quiet. Many of the delegates had stopped moving entirely, frozen in their seats as they listened. "I will give you an example," continued. "There was a terrible famine in Korea long ago. Millions of people starved. Scientists studied the of survivors and found that their bodies still held the memory of that hunger. Their metabolisms had changed. Their stress responses were different. They carried the wound of something that happened before they were born." She looked out at the alien faces. "Do you understand what this means? We do not just remember our wars, we carry them in our blood, in our bones, in the very structure of our cells. There is no human alive today who does not bear the scars of conflicts they never fought in." The high speaker spoke, its voice smaller than before. "How many of these generational wounds does your species carry?" Was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "All of them, every war, every genocide, every famine caused by conflict. 10,000 years of trauma passed down from parent to child over and over until the weight of it became part of who we are." She stepped back from the projector and nodded to who came forward. "I am a soldier," said. Her voice was harder than shaped by years of command. "I have killed people. I have watched friends die. And I will tell you something that no report or diagram can show you." She looked directly at the delegate, meeting those dark eyes without flinching. "We have a saying on Earth. Those who forget history are condemned to repeat it. So we do not forget. We teach our children about every war we have ever fought. We build museums filled with weapons and uniforms and photographs of the dead. We write books and make films and tell stories over and over so that no one can ever say they did not know." Her voice grew quieter, but somehow it filled the hall even more completely. "We remember the trenches where men drowned in mud while poison gas burned their lungs. We remember the camps where millions were murdered because of their religion or their blood. We remember the bombs that turned 2 cities into ash in the time it takes to blink. We remember because forgetting would be a betrayal of everyone who suffered." She paused. When she spoke again, her voice was almost gentle. "You asked to see our battle wounds, but I do not think you understood what you were asking. Our wounds are not just on our skin. They are in our minds, in our blood, in our culture, in our souls. We are made of scars. Every human you will ever meet carries the weight of 10,000 years of violence on their shoulders." She stepped back to stand beside and the three of them formed a line, soldier and doctor and wounded veteran, representatives of a species that had somehow survived itself. "Return to the projector. We are not finished," he said. "There is more to show you, but perhaps the council would like a moment to process what you have seen so far." The high speaker flickered like a candle in wind. "Yes," it said, and its voice sounded very tired. "A recess. We will take a recess." The delegates began to file out. None of them spoke. None of them looked at the humans as they passed. And in the silence they left behind, the hologram of Earth still floated above the projector, covered in thousands of points of light, each one marking a place where humans had killed and died and somehow, against all odds, kept going. During the recess, stood alone in a small observation room, watching ships drift past the viewport. His reflection stared back at him, looking older than he felt. The presentation had taken something out of him. Speaking about human history always did. It was like opening an old wound and letting it bleed for strangers to see. The door behind him opened. He turned to find a young alien standing there, hesitating at the entrance. It was a species that had only begun traveling between stars 5,000 years ago. They were considered young by council standards, barely out of their childhood as civilizations were measured. This was small, with soft blue skin and large eyes that seemed to hold a permanent look of wonder. The translation device on its collar identified them as Opal, though that was probably not their real name, just the closest word the translator could find. "Ambassador Park," Opal said quietly, "may I speak with you?" Nodded and gestured for the young alien to enter. Opal moved into the room carefully, as if afraid of breaking something. I have a question, Opal said. I have been thinking about it since your presentation began, and I cannot find the answer on my own. Ask said. Opal's large eyes blinked slowly. How does your species continue? You have fought so many wars, you carry so much pain. How do you not simply give up? How do you not destroy yourselves completely? It was the question had been expecting. It was the question that every alien eventually asked once they understood even a small part of human history. He had answered it many times before, but it never got easier. We almost have, he admitted. Many times. We have stood at the edge of extinction and looked into the darkness. He paused, gathering his thoughts. But we always step back, not because we are wise or because we are good. We step back because something in us refuses to stop hopping. Opal tilted their head. Hopping for what? That tomorrow will be better than today, that our children will live in a world we could not imagine, that all the suffering will someday mean something. Smiled, though it was a sad smile. Humans are very stubborn. Even when everything tells us to give up, we keep going. We do not know how to quit. He told Opal about things that the presentation had not shown. He told them about soldiers who stopped fighting on a holy day to sing songs with their enemies. He told them about doctors who crossed battle lines to treat wounded enemies because they could not watch anyone die without trying to help. He told them about nations that had hated each other for generations learning to become friends, to trade, to marry, to build new things together. We are not proud of our wars, said. Every conflict is a failure, every death is a tragedy, but we learned from them. Every treaty we sign, every law we pass to protect the innocent, every alliance we build with former enemies, these are all written in blood. We paid for our wisdom with millions of lives. We are still paying. Opal was silent for a long moment. Then they asked, do you think you will ever stop fighting? Considered the question carefully. I do not know, he said honestly. I hope so. Every generation hopes so. But I think the important thing is not whether we stop fighting. The important thing is that we keep trying to stop, that we never accept war as normal, that we always remember the cost. The door opened again, stepped in her face tense. Ambassador, we have a problem. Straightened, what is it? I have been listening to the delegates during the recess. Some of them are afraid, glanced at Opal, then continued. They are saying that humanity is too dangerous, that a species capable of so much violence should not be allowed to join the council. They want to quarantine us, keep us trapped in our own system forever. Felt something cold settle in his chest. How many? Enough to swing the vote against us. They are leading them. They say that everything we showed them today proves that humans are monsters who will eventually turn their violence on other species. Opal made a small sound of distress. But that is not fair. You showed them your wounds to prove that you understand peace. How can they use that against you? Fear does not care about fairness, said quietly. He looked at, how much time do we have? The council reconvenes in 1 hour. The vote happens today. Turned back to the viewport. The stars looked very far away. Everything humanity had worked for, every sacrifice, every step toward the wider galaxy, all of it could end in 1 hour if he could not find a way to change the council's minds. We have shown them our violence, he said slowly. We have shown them our wounds, but we have not shown them what we did with that pain. We have not shown them what we built from the ashes. He turned to face an Opal. His eyes had changed, filled now with something that might have been determination or might have been desperation. There is one more thing I can show them, he said. One more story, but I need to speak with Captain. Nodded, I will find her. As she left, Opal looked up at with those large, wondering eyes. What story will you tell them? Smiled again, and this time there was real warmth in it. The most important one, he said. The story of why we refuse to give up. The story of what war taught us about love. He walked toward the door, ready to face the council one last time. The next hour would decide humanity's future, but was not afraid. Humans had faced worse odds before. They had always found a way. The council hall fell silent as the delegates returned to their seats. The atmosphere had changed. Before, there had been curiosity and arrogance. Now there was fear. Could see it in the way they looked at the human delegation, like people watching a dangerous animal that might attack at any moment. The High Speaker rose. The vote will now proceed regarding humanity's admission to the Galactic Council. Before we begin, does the human delegation have any final words? Stepped forward. We do. I ask the Council's patience for just a few more minutes. There is one more witness I would like to present. Murmurs rippled through the hall. The delegate clicked its mandibles impatiently. We have seen enough, Ambassador. Your species is clearly too violent, too damaged to join civilized society. Let us vote and end this. Please, said just one more voice, then you can decide. The High Speaker considered this for a long moment. Then it nodded. Very well, proceed. Turned and extended his hand toward the back of the hall. Captain. An old woman walked forward. She moved slowly, her joints stiff with age, but her back was straight and her eyes were clear. Her hair was white as snow, and her face was lined with the marks of nearly 90 years of life. She wore a simple uniform with no medals or decorations. Some of the delegates shifted uncomfortably. They had expected another soldier, another display of scars and trauma. This old woman did not look like a warrior. Reached the central platform and stood beside. She looked out at the alien faces without fear, without anger. She looked at them the way a grandmother looks at children who do not yet understand the world. I am not going to talk about battles, she said. Her voice was soft but steady. I am not going to show you wounds or tell you about the people I watched die. Ambassador Park has already told you those stories. Instead, I want to tell you about my grandmother. The hall grew very still. Even the delegate stopped its restless clicking. My grandmother was born in Korea during a time of great suffering, continued. Foreign soldiers occupied our land, they took our food, they took our language, they tried to take our names. When she was young, war came. Bombs fell on our cities, families were torn apart. My grandmother lost her parents, her brothers, her home, everything. Paused, letting the words settle. After the war, there was more suffering, poverty, hunger. My grandmother had nothing. She lived in a shack made of cardboard and metal scraps. She ate whatever she could find. Many people around her gave up. They stopped trying. They let the darkness take them. She reached into her pocket and pulled out something small. It was a photograph, worn soft at the edges from years of handling. She held it up so the council could see. But my grandmother did not give up. She worked every day from sunrise to sunset. She married a man who was as poor as she was, and together they raised 7 children. 7. In a shack, with almost nothing. And every single one of those children went to school. Every single one of them learned to read and write and dream of a better future. Looked at the photograph in her hand. Her old eyes glistened with tears she did not try to hide. This is my grandmother. She is surrounded by her in this picture. There are 19 of us. She lived long enough to see us grow up, long enough to see one of us become a doctor, one become a teacher, one become a pilot who flew among the stars. She lived long enough to know that her suffering had meaning. She lowered the photograph and looked directly at the delegate. My grandmother's body carried the scars of war until the day she died. Burns, malnutrition, damage, shrapnel that doctors could never remove. She walked with pain every day of her life, but she also carried something else, something stronger than pain. His voice grew stronger, filling the hall. She carried hope. She believed that her children would live better lives than she did. She believed that her would see a universe she could not imagine. She believed that all her suffering, all her scars, all her tears would build a bridge to something beautiful. She put the photograph back in her pocket and straightened her old shoulders. You want to know if humans understand the cost of war? We understand it better than any species in this galaxy. We have been paying that cost for 10,000 years. We have buried our dead in every corner of our world. We have wept oceans of tears, and we are still here, still building, still reaching for the stars, still believing that tomorrow can be better than today. She looked around the hall one last time. That is what war taught us, not how to destroy. We already knew that. War taught us how precious peace is, how precious life is, how precious hope is. We do not fight because we love violence. We fight because we love our children more than we fear death. We fight so that someday no one will have to fight anymore. She stepped back and stood beside, and 5 humans. 5 representatives of a species that had clawed its way through darkness for 10,000 years and refused to stop reaching for the light. The high speaker was silent for a long moment. Then it spoke, and its voice was different than before, softer, almost gentle. The vote will proceed. One by one, the species of the council cast their votes. The delegate hesitated for a long time. Then slowly, it raised its arm in favor of humanity's admission. When the count was finished, the High Speaker announced the result. Humanity was admitted to the Galactic Council, not despite their violent history, but because of what they had built from its ashes. As the delegation prepared to leave, the delegate approached. For a long moment, the 2 soldiers simply looked at each other, the ancient and the human. "I thought we understood war," the said finally. "We understood a single war. You understand war?" Nodded slowly. His hand still trembled, but his voice was steady. "We do, and that is exactly why we will fight beside you to make sure you never have to learn what we learned." He extended one of its great clawed hands, took it without hesitation. And in that moment, in the crystal halls of Station Prime, a bridge was built between worlds. Not a bridge of steel or stone, but something stronger, a bridge of shared understanding, a bridge of hope. Humanity had shown the galaxy its wounds, and in those wounds, the galaxy had finally seen something it had never expected to find. Not monsters, not conquerors, just people. Broken, stubborn, beautiful people who had survived the worst of themselves and refused to stop dreaming of better days. The stars waited outside the viewport, cold and distant and full of possibilities. And humanity was finally ready to meet them.